inferential statistics have a different purpose than descriptive statistics. And the purpose of inferential statistics is to tell us or give us some idea of whether or not the difference that we've observed between the groups, so in this case the difference between the yoga group and the non-yoga group, is that difference a real difference? Is it something that would come up again if we did the study over and over again, or is it something that's just due to chance? And so inferential statistics are procedures that allow us to infer how statistically meaningful a study's results are. And statistical meaningfulness refers to how likely a study's results are to have occurred merely by chance or error. Now, the most common way to infer this is to use significance tests. And significance tests tell us the probability that the results were due to chance or error. And the most commonly accepted significance test is a 5% or less probability that results were due to chance or error. And this is generally reported in psychology articles as p is less than 0.05. Now you're probably wondering, where do we get this number from? How do we know what the number is? And so typically what happens is you're using a computer program, a statistics program that to analyze your results. So it'll give you the means for each of these two groups. So you'll get the mean for the yoga group and the non-yoga group. And it'll also report, you'll be using some sort of test to look at the difference between these two means, and it'll report the p-value. It'll tell you p equals 0.05 or p equals 0.04, whatever. So it's not a number that we pluck out of the air. It's actually reported to us through the statistics program that we use. It used to be that you had to look it up in a table, but now it's reported by the computer. So in this case then we'd look at the difference between the groups and we'd look at the p-value, and the p-value gives us some indication of whether or not we can consider these results to be true or reliable. Now this is really useful because we don't want to have to do 100 of these studies to see whether we get the same results 100 times. Instead, we just look at the p-value, and as long as the p-value is less than 0.05, then we can assume that we only have a 5% probability that the results were due to chance or error. And in other words, we have a 95% probability that the results reflect a real difference between the yoga group and the non-yoga group. So here's an example of how we might use inferential statistics. This is the same slide as the one that you saw last, with the initial average stress score of 65, and then the difference at the end of the study with the yoga group having a mean stress score of 45 and the non-yoga group having a mean stress score of 55. So 45 and 55. And when we first looked at this, we couldn't tell whether this result meant anything. And is it worth our while to do yoga to reduce stress, or should we not bother? That's essentially what we're asking ourselves here. So what inferential statistics can tell us is whether or not this 45 versus 55 difference is statistically significant. If it is, it means essentially that it's a reliable difference between yoga and not doing yoga. And if p is less than 0.05 here, then this tells us something important about the value of doing yoga. It shows us that it will reduce stress better than not doing yoga. Now, it's a separate question. Is it low enough? Is the drop low enough to do yoga, or does stress kind of go away by itself? And that's a separate question. That's not a question about statistical significance. That's a question about real life significance. So we would separately have to ask ourselves, is this difference between 45 and 55 enough of a difference to advise people to do yoga, or should we just simply tell them to wait it out and your stress score will go down? That's a different question. Okay, so the inferential statistics here are all about whether or not we would expect to always find this benefit for yoga. Is it a reliable benefit, or is it something that just happened by chance? Okay, that's all for now. Please let me know if you have any questions.